play.
Actually, we had a question about the first hole here, and I just wanted to explain it for you. So I have a pot there. I'm giving it a shot. So my 5 when I have to stroke is the 4. Therefore, we're playing the first hole. So those dots there, I have too many shots. I'm very good bandit, but yeah, ends up my win. But yeah. Any more questions about that scorecard?
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead.
So at the end of the match, when you realize George wins 4-3, but you decide to play casually to finish out the 18, do you do anything to your scorecard at that point?
This is our next topic. So first thing I'll say about playing casually, just because I heard some leagues in here be like, I would just respect what your league or your tournament competition organizers have asked. Sometimes they'll ask that you just come in. Other times they'll ask that you play out because you might be playing a side game in your league or whatever. So that's what I'll say about playing casually. But George is going to talk more about your question right now in the scorecard as one of our PSAs.
Yes, so thank you, Ashley. So in the Purple PSA, there is no requirement for you to sign your scorecard or even return your scorecard, really. So you'll be given a scorecard at the start of each match, and that's really for your use only. You're really using it to A, keep track of the score, and B, keeping track of your handicap pots. So it's really for your use only, just to keep track. There's no need to be signing it or confirming scores afterwards. So yeah, after your match is finished, you can do whatever you want with it. So
yeah, for score posting purposes, you may choose to be tracking your scores or your most likely scores. There's a WHS session that's going to happen later where they'll address all your handicapping questions, not particularly our specialty up here. So that would be a reason to keep tracking your score. And again, if your league wants that card for some reason, respect that, but the rules do not require that in match play.
great. So another scenario is that you play all 18 holes and your match is still tied. It was a very close match, say between me and Ashley, and we were all tied for 18. Now, typically, your match will be extended. You play what's called extra holes, and your match will just continue until there is a winner. It could go 1 hole, it could go 9 holes. You're just going to keep going until there is a result. So as you can see here, you'll be playing the same holes in the same order as in the round. So if you started on the 9th hole, played through 18, and then back to the front 9, you're playing in that same order again. And handicap strokes are applied in the same way as they were in the first 18 holes. So it's not like you go to the 19th hole and you have no more shots anymore. You'll still be getting the same amount of strokes that you would during the normal 18 holes. So the terms of competition, this happens more in team matches, but the committee may say, if your match is tied for 18 holes, we're going to consider that tied. Don't play extra holes. And here's a picture of our Jennifer Cup show here at the Curtis Cup, where typically at the Curtis Cup or Walker Cup or Solheim Cup, those matches are considered tied and you won't see extra holes there.
Your leagues might ask you to do that because you teed up in the afternoon and now it's going to be dark, or because they don't have any room on their tee sheet to send you off for extra holes. So that would be reasons where you all might see that being in play.
So some tips for you. So going back to the scorecard, we recommend that you always check your handicap declared in your scorecard. Now, it's very important because the handicap that you declare, if it's too high and it affects the amount of shots that your partner thinks you're getting, unfortunately, that's a disqualification. Your partner's playing under the belief that you'll be getting more shots, and therefore that's a serious breach and you'll be getting disqualified. And on the other hand, if you declare a handicap that's too low and you don't change it in time or correct it in time, you'll be stuck with that lower handicap. So it's very important that before you tee off and before you get down the first hole, you check you've declared the right handicap. Another thing to do is to confirm the status of your match with your opponent after each hole. Now, this is important and it may be tricky in some matches if, hey, it's a really obvious match and your opponent aren't maybe getting along too well, you don't want to really be checking with them every hole. But it's important because if there's a misunderstanding there and the status of the match is sort of incorrectly determined, that's going to be the new status of the match. I'll give you an example. Say Ashley and I are playing, and we're going back and forth, and the match is I'm 2 up through 7. But actually, I think it's actually, I say to Ashley, hey, is it 1 up? And she goes, yeah, I think it's 1 up. And we don't realize until the next hole, and I get halfway down the 8th fairway and go, oh, wait, I had a shot in that 1 hole on the front 9. It's too late. We've already declared that the match is 1-up. We've played off 8th tee, and that's the new status of the match. So even if you figure it out later, that's too late.
Brutal but true.
So, and then lastly, another tip is if you're playing with a partner, so it could be four-ball, foursomes, Chapman, there's really only need one score per team. So you may be both in the hole, but as soon as your partner has a score, you can pick yours up if you really want to. So again, another example, say Ashley's hit it stone dead, she had a 3-foot putt for birdie, and I'm hacking around in the bunker. There's no way I can get a birdie or even a par. I'm way out the hole. There's really no need for me to continue play. And we recommend actually that for pace of play, just sort of for the good of the game, that if you're way out the hole, you're free to pick that up. So there's really no need for you to be submitting 2 scores at every hole now.
All right, so that was scoring. Can anyone guess the next topic? I wish, I'm so hungry. We're in match play. What can you do in match play? Okay, no one gets my slide here. Concessions. Ah. I thought it was so clever, and you're all just staring at me. Okay, I'm already way over time. So here are the basic things to know about concessions. Concessions only exist in match play. If you're wondering why is she saying concessions? Concession is basically when you're giving someone the putt in most cases. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but first we're gonna watch Catherine tell us a little bit more about concessions, I think.
Differences between match play and stroke play is that in match play, we frequently see players not holing out on the putting green. And that's because concessions are a key part of match play. I'm sure when you've played a match at home, you've conceded a putt to your opponent, but what you may not realize is that concessions can happen anywhere during play of the hole.
She looks so happy right there.
Differences with
All right, so as Catherine just said, concessions can happen anywhere throughout a hole. You can concede 3 things when you're playing match play. You can concede your opponent's next stroke. You can concede the match. Maybe you show up on the range and it's not going so well. You got the and you don't want to play. You can concede that match, and you can concede the hole. If you're going to concede the hole, you can do this before either player starts the hole. That's a little different than when you're tying the hole. So we'll talk about that. All right, conceding the hole. Does anyone know what golf course this is? What hole this is? Yeah, I don't know either. I just Googled scary golf holes. So for the sake of our presentation, we're gonna consider this a part 3. So here could be an example of a time where you would want to concede the hole. Your opponent steps up, clears the junk, lands at 3 feet from the pin. Good shot. You step up, you top the first one in the water. Like, okay, I still have that chance for that hole in one. So you put another ball down, you hit it in the water. Hey, your opponent is likely to make a birdie, or at worst, probably a par. You're already hitting 5 off the tee. Save your balls. Just concede the hole, move on. The hole is yours. That would be an example of a time where you'd want to concede the hole. So if you're gonna concede the next stroke, which is the most common thing that you would be conceding in a match, you can do that anytime before they make their next stroke, regardless as to if they have a pop. Okay, sometimes we hear ladies in particular, sometimes men too, that are saying, I can't concede that because you have a pop. That is not true. You can concede it regardless. And when your opponent concedes your next stroke, you have to count that. It's not like a freebie. So if you hit the ball 6 times and now they say, that's good, I concede that stroke, you made a 7. You did not make a 6. Okay, this is straight from the rules book, and you can probably tell because it says, a concession made while the opponent's ball is still in motion after the previous stroke applies to the opponent's next stroke unless the ball is holed, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what does that mean? Here's what it means. You have a 30-foot putt. You hit a really good 30-foot putt. It's not going to go in the hole, but it's pretty obvious that it's gonna land right next to the hole. And before that ball stops rolling, your opponent says, that's good. Okay, that concession applies to your tap in, not to the 30-foot putt you just hit. Okay, it applies to your next stroke. Okay, so when you're making a concession, you really can do it however you so choose. You can do it verbally, you can do it with a gesture. A lot of times we hear this be called a gimme. That's a gimme, pick it up, that's good, whatever. You can give someone a thumbs up, you can give them just pick up their ball for them, that's fine. Those are all ways to make a concession for your opponent. With that, obviously, the rules understand that there could be a reasonable misunderstanding that you made a concession you didn't really mean to. In that case, there's no penalty, which feels weird, right? Because someone just picked up their ball and play, and in stroke play, that would probably be a problem, depending on where you're at. But if it's a reasonable misunderstanding, you think they conceded the putt, but they didn't, just put it back and continue playing. And then lastly, we have a video here. If you make a concession, you don't get to take it back. You don't get to say, oh, never mind. This is our friend Jay Roberts here.
The situation causes a lot of debate. So after missing your birdie putt, your opponent concedes your next stroke for par. But for whatever reason, you decide to putt it anyway and miss. Your opponent then claims that the stroke counts. So what's the ruling? Does your par stand or did you just make birdie? In match play, once a concession is made, they are final. They cannot be declined or withdrawn. So as soon as your opponent conceded your par putt, you completed the hole with par.
Do we get that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Which also, you can choose to putt after a concession is made. For pace of play, that sounds like my daughter. For pace of play, I would not necessarily recommend it, but it's not a penalty. There's no issue with it. The only time that there would be an issue with it, I don't know if it's on this slide or not, I might be jumping. The only time there would be an issue with that is if you're playing a partner format. The opposing side, which means team, concedes, say George's putt, he's my partner. If he can influence my putt, meaning I can then see the line, I can gain information from the stroke he made after his putt was already conceded, then we're going to have a problem. Okay. So if you're playing a partner format, your putt is conceded, pick it up. What do we got? It's really kind of hard to see this. Okay, so this is just saying, if you are playing a partner format, George and I are partners, he can concede the opponent's putt, I can concede the opponent's putt, doesn't matter. When you're playing in a partner format, for the most part, you can do anything that your partner can do. This they got it. I thought for sure you would all understand my concession slide and be confused by this. I was wrong. You cannot concede your partner's stroke. You can concede your opponent's stroke. You cannot concede your partner's stroke, which means you can't just say that's a gimme. Glad we clarified.
Great, so our next topic is order of play and honor, which I demonstrated earlier by playing our turn. But here we'll have our definition of honor. Now, as we talked about, strategy is a very big part of match play. A lot of the decisions you make and sort of choices you make are based on your opponent's play, your opponent's shot, what they are and whatnot. So that's why honor is important. And honor means you have the right to play first in the teeing area. And it's very important in match play. It means basically the player who won the previous hole has the honor. So on the first hole, it will be decided by lots or committee. Either on the tee sheet, it will say who's going off first, or you can flip a coin or flip a tee. However, for the rest of the holes, whoever won the last hole always has that honor, and that continues on. So say Ashley wins the first hole in our match, and we tie the next 16 holes. Ashley has the honor for all of those holes, and likely will for the hole, simply because it just doesn't change until you win the hole. It's not the status of the match. Even if I'm up, if Ashley won the last hole, it's still her honor. So yeah, if we're moving on, and that honor continues on on the fairway. So we're going to talk about order of play now. So we've got another video from Catherine talking about order of play.
A number of rules in match play are different than those rules in stroke play. One of those is the importance of the order of play in match play. Once you've begun playing a hole, the ball farthest from the hole is played first. And that's true regardless of where it's located. So here, even though my ball's not on the putting green, it's closer to the hole than my opponent's ball on the putting green, so it's my opponent's turn to play. If I were to play first and play out of turn, my opponent could immediately cancel that stroke and require me to play again in the correct order.
Great, so the big takeaway from that video is it doesn't matter where you are on the golf course, it simply matters who's furthest away. So as you saw there, you could be off the green, but if your partner's on the green, it doesn't matter if they're putting or not, it simply matters who's furthest away. Now, you can agree to play out of turn on the basis of saving time. So if I have to go to the bathroom or something, I can say, Ashley, you can just feel free to hit if you'd like. We can play out of turn there. But the caveat there is it has to be decided every time. You can't decide in the first fairway, hey, let's ignore order play today, play ready golf. It doesn't work like that because the match changes, scenario changes, and it's always important who's playing first. So you can do it as many times as you want, but it just has to be agreed upon each time. Now, what happens if you play out of turn? If you play out of turn, it's up to your opponent to decide so what happens is you can cancel and replay the stroke. So it's up to your opponent. If you play out of turn, they can go, hey, play out of turn, please cancel and replay the stroke. The stroke doesn't count, but you're having to play that again. And again, that isn't cut and dry. It's up to your opponent there to sort of imply a bit of strategy and decide if they want you to hit that again. I can see a scenario where I play out of turn, but I shank it out of bounds. My opponent might say, don't worry about it. We're going to count that as in play. You're going to take stroke distance. Unlucky. So that must be done before either player makes another stroke. It's one of the rare times in the rules of golf where you can replay a stroke without taking a penalty stroke. The sort of point is it has to be the opponent that decides that. And it's a choice, not a requirement there. So moving into sort of order of play when you're playing with a partner. Now, in the rules of golf, when you play as a team, as a partnership, you're considered on the same team and the same side. So it really doesn't matter between you and your partner who plays first. There is no order of play between you and your partner. And again, this is where you can sort of use some strategy, decide, hey, like I have a shot in this hole. Do you want to go first? And I'll see where you go, and then I'll decide what to hit there. Or, hey, you hit it further than me. I'll go first, so you wait for the green and we're not holding it play. So different scenarios like that where you can use order of play just to sort of to your advantage within a team there. Where are we?
This is what I already said. This was, remember when I said, I think this is on a different slide. This is the exception about playing in any order you want. So if your putt has been conceded, you cannot choose to putt that out if it's going to help your partner.
Yeah, we won't go into that too much, but yeah, if it's obviously going to help your partner and the putt's been conceded, then you're not allowed to keep playing.
But having said that, if your partner, the putts have not been conceded.
Mhm.
But if Melissa putts and I'm inside her, or even if I'm outside, she's a better putter, we can choose between us who gets to putt first, regardless of who's technically out between us.
That's right. So on the putting green there, say if you want to show your partner the line of the putt, you're allowed to play out a turn and show them the putt. If they have a birdie putt and you putt, you can show them the line, and that's okay. It's just when the putt's been conceded.
Right.
Which is part of the strategy of choosing to concede someone's putt, right? If you don't want them to benefit from seeing that putt, that's when you would, maybe choose to concede that putt. Any other questions on that? I think that's kind of the end of order of play. This is the last thing on order of play. Again, we respect that your leagues and clubs, and we love ready golf. And when I was preparing for this presentation, I was like Google searching clearly And I found this t-shirt and said, play ready golf, and I almost bought it because it was really fun. But in match play, ready golf is not, it's not really applicable because there is so much strategy involved and you are making your playing decisions based on what your opponent has done. Order of play, meaning whoever is furthest plays first, is very important. So play quickly without playing ready golf.
And with that being said, match play is one of those forms where if you're sort of sensible with concessions and playing quickly, it's often a quicker game. So ready golf is sort of surplused by a different format of the game there.
All right, this is kind of the last section and we have 7 minutes. This is so good, so good. Okay, so earlier in the definition of match play, or I think it was the purpose statement, we talked about the reasons why match play is different. One of those is that you have these unique responsibilities. So one of those unique responsibilities is that you are required to know and tell your opponent about the number of strokes taken. So you're playing a hole, your opponent asks you, what are you lying? How many of you hit? You have to tell them. You can't not tell them. You need to tell them at that point in time before they make their next stroke. Again, because the strategy of the game is so important, you may choose to hit a shot differently based on how many strokes they've hit and how many strokes you've hit. If you do not respond to that request, or if you give the wrong number of strokes because you forgot about something or you just weren't counting accurately or whatever it was, you're going to get the general penalty. George told us what that means earlier. Loss of hole. So a pretty penal situation for simply, giving the wrong number of strokes. But the good news is that the rules do understand, believe it or not, that sometimes we make mistakes. So you can correct that. So if you've given the wrong number of strokes, you can correct this if you've done so in time. Okay, the next level of match play rules presentation, you would hear that a lot. There's a lot of important things about the timeliness of when you do things. But in terms of this one, you can correct, if you give the wrong number of strokes to your opponent, you can correct this. So if this happens while you're playing the hole, you can correct that before your opponent makes another stroke. So you're walking up to the green. I say, George, how many strokes have you hit? He says 3. We keep walking up to the green. He thinks about it. He's like, oh, shoot, that's wrong. Hey, Ashley, I actually made 4. Or I actually hit 4 and I haven't hit anything yet because we're just walking up to the green. That's fine. Okay, as long as he corrects that before I make another stroke.
You have to tell them you have, you get a spot,
You are not responsible for including the pop or the handicap stroke. It is each player's responsibility to understand where those fall. That's why George mentioned earlier that your committee's likely giving you a scorecard with that information on it. If they don't, I would highly recommend you make sure you know where those are. But no, just you're only responsible for the gross score. It would probably be nice if you told them that, if you want a friendly match, but if you don't want a friendly match, I guess the rules don't care. So if the correct number or the incorrect number of strokes is given after a hole is completed, so you both putted out or putts have been conceded, you put the flagstick in, you're walking or driving to the next hole, you need to correct that mistake before either of you tees off on the next hole. The exception or whatever you want to call it here. If you give the wrong number of strokes and it doesn't impact your understanding as to whether or not the hole was won, the rules don't care. Okay, so say it was a train wreck of a hole for the both of us. George makes a 10, I make an 8. We're just so exasperated after that hole. We're walking to the next tee. George is like, I actually made an 11. It doesn't matter because who won the hole? I did. So it doesn't matter. Even if George were to say, oh, I actually made a 9, even though I told you 10 back on the putting green, I still won the hole. It doesn't impact the understanding of that. So there's not going to be a loss of hole penalty associated with that. So along with that is another responsibility related to penalty strokes. You're required to tell your opponent about any penalty strokes that you incur. You must do this as reasonably soon as possible. So basically all this is saying is it doesn't have to be done before a next stroke is made. necessarily. For example, George is on the right side of the fairway. He's dealing with his own ball. I'm on the left side of the fairway searching for mine in tall fescue, tall native grass, and I accidentally kicked my ball. George would have no way to know that necessarily because he's dealing with his own business on the other side of the hole. So I would obviously need to put my ball back. Once I did that, I could play. George has done his thing. Now it's reasonably, as soon as reasonably possible, that I should say to him, hey, George, I just want you to know I accidentally moved my ball over there. So I incurred a 1-stroke penalty. If they can't see it, you don't get to just bottle that information up and think you can sneak one by them. You would need to tell them that you incurred that penalty stroke. If you don't do that, you lose the hole. It's gonna be the general penalty. Now, this is not required if it's super obvious. For example, you hit your ball straight into a lake. He knows, okay? He watches you get out another ball, take it over here, drop it. You don't then need to be like, hey, George, I took a penalty stroke, okay? If it's obvious, the rules do not require that. If it is not obvious and they may not know, you have to disclose that information. So this is really cool. So we often get asked, what's your favorite rule of golf? And I never have a good answer, so maybe it's this one. In match play, you get to choose whether or not you act on breaches of the rules. And again, the theory here is that we're not worried about what the other 120 players are doing out on the golf course because the match is strictly between the two of us. So, well, I always use the bunker example, it's not a good one. George is in a bunker. We're playing a match. And he is over there taking practice swings in the bunker, hitting the sand. He clearly doesn't understand that the rule says you can't do that. I know that. I see him doing it. And I get to choose whether or not I act on that breach of the rules. So I can say to him, hey, George, that's a penalty. You need to add him up. Okay. Or I can just carry on. I'm probably going to win the hole anyway, or I don't want to cause confrontation or whatever it is. The rules of match play allow for that. Now, what you can't do is agree to waive a rule. So if at the beginning of the round, George and I are standing on the first tee waiting to tee off, and we say, hey, you know that rule about bunkers where you can't touch the sand in a practice swing? I probably think that's stupid, so can we just take practice swings in the bunker today? Is that cool with you? Okay. No, that would be agreeing to waive a rule. So there's a very fine line here between choosing to ignore a breach when someone is, for lack of better terms, ignorant about their rules violation, or agreeing to waive the rules. Okay, so you have an issue in match play. This is also really cool. You can decide by agreement how to move forward. So the best example here is that my ball is in yucky ground. Maybe there's a tire rut or it's muddy or something. The committee hasn't marked that ground under repair. I think I should get ground under repair relief. I can just say to George, like, hey, George, can I take ground under repair relief for this?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So we just agreed as to how to proceed in that, and that's totally fine in match play only. That's not fine in stroke play because all the other players need to ensure that the playing field is equal, and if a different player 3 holes later is in that same spot, they would need to be treated fairly. In match play, it doesn't matter because it's just 1v1. So that's one way to resolve an issue. If you can't, then we could do another 3-hour seminar on requesting a ruling in match play. You can request a ruling, and there again, this is another thing about timeliness and when you have to do that by. So just do it as soon as you become aware of the facts of the situation. As soon as something doesn't seem right to you, as soon as you learn about a potential violation 3 holes ago, say, I'm requesting a ruling, call a rules phone number, find your local whomever, or just tell them that you're going to do that at the end of the round. That would probably be sufficient for requesting a ruling. And then the committee gets to figure it out and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And lots of you are probably familiar with Rule 20.1C3. I had to say one. Which is the option in stroke play only to play a second ball if you're unsure what to do. Then you would report it to the committee at the end of your round. But you don't have the option in match play. Okay. You request a ruling or you decide by agreement.
So
Can
that-
you hold the match to wait for that ruling before you take the throw?
I would not necessarily recommend you hold up the match for that. And again, this is like the 200 level class. There's a lot of things that could happen there. Find a way to keep moving forward, finish the hole and.
So that concludes our match play talk. I'll get to your question 1 second, sorry. We recommend that you download the Rules About Golf or Rules About Golf app. It's a great resource, it's very new, it saves you flicking through the book, and the best thing about it is it has a search feature. So if you're on the golf course and you get stuck, it has a search for you. And we also have our CGA website. We have a lot of rules resources. I know Lewis Harry works very hard on those. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely have a look there. We also, Lewis and I are going to be doing some seminars this spring. We have some virtual ones and also some in-person ones, and they're free to attend. Just please just sign up, and we're happy to have you along, and the more the merrier. So, and then lastly, rules referees. We can't really do what we do at CPA without them. We're very grateful to have them, and if you're interested in becoming a referee and learning more, please let us know. We have some great courses, and
Is there any of you out there? Funny, I saw you, Jan, Carla, Sandy. Well, we have some great rules officials that chose not to attend our wonderful women's summit today. We promised that we would pair you up with some of your peers and help you through that process. It seems scary, but it's not. We like to have fun.
It's great. So.
and now we can get on to some questions if we have any. Yes.
I will, hold on, sorry. It's 10:49. The next thing I believe starts at 11. So we are not gonna be offended if you get up and walk away, but we will entertain your questions right now.
What about posting your scores, particularly if you haven't finished the round or, finished holes? How do you post those scores? Do you have to post your scores when you play match play?
Yes, you would need to post your scores when you play match play.